Okay, it looks like I'm live here. Think I'm live. There we go. It's counting down. So let me share screen here and let's talk about what we're going to talk about here today. Let me go over here, share that screen. What I'm going to talk about are all of the stories about drones in the sky in the Northeast or the Mid-Atlantic in New Jersey. Looks like a little in Pennsylvania now, and then New York State. And this is a really interesting topic for me in that I can relate to. So I'm really an amateur astronomer, and I can relate to in my background actually seeing this kind of thing. And my particular experience goes back, gosh, over a year and a half ago, and I'm outside doing what I usually do with my telescope, and I look into the western sky, and I see in the sky just kind of what you see in some of the videos that are online nowadays. Um, Gosh, this is so much different to use this than using TikTok. I was gonna kind of draw what I see because I don't have the video handy for me. But what I saw is pretty similar to what you see, and yeah. So I got probably can't hear that, but so yeah, yeah, right there. So what I've seen, and hey Buzz, how are you doing? Good to see you, man. Uh, you think so? Are you really saying that? So, you know, I I pay attention to this a lot, and I was about a year and a half ago, I was outside and I was looking into the night sky, had my telescope out, and I saw what was kind of like right here a little bit. And I'm a science guy, so I look at things a little bit empirically. And so I thought about, well, what am I seeing there? And it every night for about 2 weeks, I saw this same thing. And what was really strange about it is that it didn't move in the sky, and it kind of faded in, faded out, and just kept doing that. And it didn't move, didn't go away, didn't do anything. It just finally faded from sight. So I live about, gosh, I don't know, maybe 80 miles from an Air Force base. And I thought, is it related to the Air Force base, or what exactly is it? And I wrote it off. I figured, it's probably just a helicopter, and I don't hear it in the distance or something like that. But now all this has come up in the East Coast and New Jersey and New York, Pennsylvania, those areas like that. So it makes you wonder, what's going on here? And there's so many of them. It's crazy. There's hundreds of them. And if you look across the different news stories that are out there, it's all over the world here. It's not just in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. It's everywhere. And out at Vandenberg, you've seen it. Uh, China, Japan, different areas, and when I'm on TikTok a lot now, so I look there, and you gotta figure a lot of people are just faking what they're doing there, and, it's not real video, but when you look at some of the news stories, like the presence on News Nation and what's going on, and the stories they cover, and there's some other of the mainstream media do some coverage of it. It makes you wonder, and if I put my conspiratorial hat on, it makes me wonder about two or three things. One, I'm going to put it in chat. One, it's really our military, right? So I'm thinking, is it really? If you think about the Department of Defense budget, there is there's a significant portion of that into things that we really don't know what's funding, the Area 51, all that stuff. And a lot of stuff you never hear about, and I may not want to know about that we're doing advanced technology wise. Maybe it's that, and they're just testing it out, and they don't really care, or they're not going to say what it really is. So that's one option, right? And you think about, okay, if that's the case, what's really going on here? Uh, they don't care. They don't feel like they owe us an explanation, whatever it is. That's probably the best option in my mind. If I put my conspiratorial hat on, then what's the other option? Well, number two option is it's someone else, right? In the chat. So someone else. So what's that mean? Is it Russia? Is it China? And I have a hard time really believing that. If it was that, I would think that they'd be trying to take him out. They'd try to get one down, but from what I can tell in the congressional hearings that are going on, nobody's trying to do that. They're, the FBI and Secret Service were in congressional hearings yesterday, and they didn't say anything. They said, "We don't know what it is. It doesn't seem like it's gonna harm anybody." So I don't think it's that. It's not someone else. And then the third is where it gets really wild, and it's you starting to get into if you're familiar with, like, George Knapp from KLAS in Las Vegas, who really broke the story about Area 51 some 20 some years ago. That gets into whole other things, right? Are we talking are we talking otherworldly in the chat, right? If that's the case, what does that mean? And I don't know. I'm not, my head's not there right now. I don't discount that it could be that, but is that what it is? What is it? And I have to believe it was number two. They'd take it down just like they did the Chinese balloons last year, but they're not doing that from what I can tell. So that one I'm counting out. So the most logical, if I go with Occam's razor says the most likely explanation, the most obvious explanation is probably what it is, then it's got to be our military, I'm thinking, or some branch of our. I guess it could be somebody's orchestrating a whole bunch of drones out there, but I have a hard time believing that. This has been going on for months and months, right? All fall. And it makes you wonder, well, what the heck is it? What the heck is it then? Because it's not an individual, I don't think. So it's got to be our military is what I that's where my head first goes. But I love the conspiratorial side of this thing, and I'm a big fan of like George Knapp, and if you're familiar with Gary Nolan, here, let me pull him up. If anybody's familiar with him, Gary Nolan is a professor at this guy. He is out at Stanford University, and he's a PhD in some sort of a medical field, but pretty bright guy, and he has a lot to say about this kind of stuff and what's going on. If I get past this stinking ad, let's get past this ad. I won't play it, but yeah, this is Gary Nolan. He's a PhD from Stanford University, and he's pretty smart guy. And some of the inventions he had, and some of the work that he's done, and he would say it's probably. I don't know for sure. I've heard him go between number one and number three here. The military, so it's the U.S. or it's something otherworldly here. So one of those two. But it's really interesting to listen to people that I think have some credibility, other than this, some crackpots that you see out there. So I don't know. That's where I'm going between the 2. In a way, I kinda hope it is number 3. Is it aliens? Or is it I mean, there's some really crazy theories out there, right, about what it really could be. And it could be, I mean, you see all sorts of crazy stuff with think of, Commander Fravor, the pilot from the Air Force that testified a few years ago, and he talked about how off the coast of San Diego, between there and Catalina Island, what was it, the Tic Tac video and all that. That's just crazy stuff and how it goes in and out of the water. So you get into all sorts of theories about is something underwater, and the speeds that you're talking about are just crazy. So, well, I don't know. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's sure interesting when I think about all this stuff that's coalescing together. A lot of different events in the world seem to be uh, leading to something. I'll just say that either there's been a huge breakthrough where they've reverse engineered something technologically, or it's some kind of a charade meant to do something a lot more conspiratorial that I'm not quite sure I've figured out yet. Buzz, if you're still there, have you seen anything like this ever in your skies? You ever seen something in the sky that you wonder about? Yeah, I'm not sure who's left or not, but yeah, I'd be interested in hearing if somebody's seen anything. You're saying aliens for sure. I'd love to hear it because, I had an experience when I was 10 years old. I'll say it's the closest experience I've ever had to aliens. I'll call it. I lived in a small town, and my dad would take us out. We had a farm about 15 miles into the country, but we didn't live in the farm. We just had cattle out there, and so we would go out there and feed them every day and then come back to town about 15 miles away. It's on the land that I live on now is where the farm was at. I'm about 15 miles from town. And so on the way back to town one late fall night, we were driving back, and it was a common thing to see where I live between Evansville, Indiana, and near the St. Louis area. There's an Air Force base. So it'd be a common thing to see jets going back and forth on sortie runs, I guess you'd call them, or just going back and forth. And so we'd head back, and you'd see that sometimes. But this particular night, it was in October, and we were driving back home on the interstate, and I looked up at the window, and it was like Octoberish, and it was, later in the evening, so it was getting dark early. And I looked up, and I saw exactly, it's that triangle shape one that you see. See if I can find it here. Triangle shape. So this isn't the right website to be doing it on. Yeah, that I saw it, and at the time, and I think now, was that it wasn't exactly like that. It was triangular shaped, but it had a lot more lights on it than that. And I thought, okay, now that I look back on that, I didn't know what it was, and I didn't really say anything to anybody because I thought, wow, this is really weird. This is like 1981, 82. And so I'm seeing this thing up in the sky as we're going down the interstate, and I see that, and I think, what the heck is that? And I don't remember if I said anything to my dad or not about it, but I don't think I said anything to him about it. Now that I think about it. But as I reflect back on it, I'm thinking, okay, that's 1981, 82. Was that really just a stealth bomber? They were designing, and they just hadn't told anybody yet. But that's always nagged at me, and it's the one thing I think that I wasn't sure about what was really going on. Again, that was probably 1982, 81, 82. But that's my only real experience with anything otherworldly, I'll call it, or questionable, whether it was alien or whatever it might be. The the thing a year ago, back in 2023, as I looked into the West, it was also in the fall of the year, and it was exactly like you see in all these reports now, these drones. It looked just like that in the distance, and it didn't move like it wasn't an airplane because it didn't move like an airplane. So I know it wasn't that. Um, was it a helicopter? I thought my first initial instinct was that it was like so uh, where a lot of folks live, I think in the Midwest, there's a lot of uh, what do I call them? It's people they make meth. I'll just say that it's people making meth. And so what they'll do is they'll go into a cornfield in the middle of it because it's great coverage, right? And when the corn gets so high in the middle of the summer into the fall, you can't really tell what's going on in the middle of a cornfield. So it's pretty common in this area to have a meth lab in the middle of a cornfield. And so I saw this thing in the sky way out there. Looked about like that, but it wasn't moving at all. And I thought in my head, is that like local law enforcement that's zoned in on a meth lab, and they're just doing recon on it or something like that, or trying to find it? But it didn't move at all. And slowly it just faded in. It was in. I was outside with my telescope, so I noticed it in the western sky. I thought, what the heck is that? Because I know it wasn't Venus. Because I know Venus wasn't there that time of year, or in 2023. So I thought it's either got to be a helicopter, but I couldn't hear it, and it was close enough where I'm sure I would have heard it if it was a helicopter, and it wasn't that. So I thought, okay, is it a drone maybe that law enforcement's using to spy on the meth lab? And that's somewhere in there is where I finally landed on what I thought it actually was. And today I guess I still think it's that, but when you hear all these reports out there of what's going on here, this is one's from Austin, Texas. Let's say that's what would it be, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, almost. This stuff goes on all the time, so a lot of it you have to dismiss. When Venus is really bright in the western sky, you get a lot of reports, or you used to get a lot of reports to law enforcement about UFOs. I don't know if that's so big anymore. It used to be a pretty big deal, and Venus is pretty bright in the western sky right now. But I can tell you, what I saw was not Venus. It just wasn't. And what you see in all the news reports in New Jersey, particularly like over Bedminster golf course. So Trump's, no, that's more like kind of what I saw uh, over Trump's golf course, and then what you see in all the things that's being shared on TikTok. I mean, it's all over TikTok. And TikTok may not be around much longer, I know, but that is really, there's so much out there on people posting stuff like this on TikTok. Immediately I look at like a scientist does or an engineer does, and I think empirically about what am I seeing here. So how is it a sensational report or not? And I'm going to guess way over half of them really are. unless it comes from a credible news source. And I like News Nation a lot. I don't like Chris Cuomo so much, but I think he's does a really good job in the way he reports. But a lot of the stuff on TikTok's pretty sensational. But there's some stuff you see out there that really makes you ask what the heck's going on. And when you see this kind of stuff and these people reporting here, I mean, this guy, if you're familiar with this, that's Cuomo. Hold on, his panel here. I mean, these guys are legit. This is Lou Elizondo. If you're familiar with Lou Elizondo, he used to work for like the DNI or something like that, Department of National Intelligence, and he was an investigator. I mean, he was a just a he did like recon as a spy in other countries, and then one day he was asked by someone, I forget how it worked exactly, if he was interested. He went into somebody's office. This is the government, in the military, and he said he got called into someone's office who was like, I don't know, two up from him, and the question they asked him is, "What do you think about UFOs, Lou?" And I think his answer was, I don't think about them at all." And what they were really doing was they identified him as someone who had done a really good job in the work that he had done in reconnaissance and spying, or whatever he called it, was what his job was in the regular military. And they wanted him to get into research in this area, which I'm thinking, okay, this is the military doing this. And this guy's legit. I mean, I don't know if he's out to sell books now or whatever, but he's been in front of Congress, he's testified, and he talks about a lot of the stuff we say here, and he can't really say exactly what he's seeing or what's going on right now, but he sure alludes to it. If you go to YouTube right now and you Google his name, Lou Elizondo, you're going to come up with videos. This was just from yesterday. This one, he's talking about it yesterday with Cuomo on News Nation. I do not know who this other guy is, though. I've never seen him before. I'm familiar with a lot of these folks that are in this space, but I don't know who that guy is. I mean, there's some pretty famous people in these areas. Alizendo, and that's a congressman, I think. I'm not sure. I think it's a congressman. Let's see. Yeah, and yeah, for sure. And that's Lou. And then there's other people who are pretty big players in here that I think have credibility. One of them is um, George Knapp. If you're familiar with George Knapp, he is a reporter from KLAS TV in Las Vegas, and back in the early 80s, yeah, back in the early 80s or mid 80s, he's the one that broke the story about Area 51. And if you're familiar with Bob Lazar, he's been on Rogan's show podcast, and so is Knapp. He's the one that broke all those stories, and he would say the same kind of thing. They can't say because of the connections they have with people in the know in the military. It's like, to protect that source who's kind of feeding them information, they really can't say everything they know, otherwise they're going to lose their source. So it's like you only get bits and pieces. But I remember Knapp and another guy named Jeremy Corbell, who was on Rogan's show too last year or earlier this year. He's been on it several times, but he was just on it this summer, and he talked about how there's stuff coming up that's going to happen that are going to blow your mind, and it's going to be after the congressional hearings on all this, on UAPs they call them, right? And that happened before Thanksgiving, a couple of weeks ago, right? A few weeks ago now, where you had all these people. Michael Schellenberger, this guy was on here, this Lou Alizendo, he was one of them. Somebody from NASA, and I forget some of the other people on the panel, but they're getting quizzed by Congress. And they're getting, people, congressional people, just quizzing them about what's going on here. And as just a regular American, I'm a self-professed amateur astronomer. I'm sitting there listening to this congressional hearing, and it's blowing my mind. I'm sitting here thinking, as a taxpayer and citizen in this country, I'm sitting here watching a congressional hearing about UAPs, or what we used to call UFOs. And I'm thinking, my gosh, this real? And it sure is, but they can't say exactly what it is. This guy Elizondo, he hints at there's just a lot we're not being told. And it's just for just a pretty common guy from the Midwest to think about, other than that option one I have in the chat there, that this is really the military. Or not, I guess the off chance it's just pranksters out there with a bunch of drones. But boy, they got a lot of drones and they got a lot of reach, because you're seeing reports now from what, from Brooklyn, I saw one last night. There's one, several, and they're all over New Jersey, different counties in New Jersey. They're in now in Philadelphia. I saw one. I know Buzz, if you're still on here, I saw one in the Cleveland area recently. Gosh, I mean, where else? Up in New England. I last week, one in the St. Louis area, which is what I'm closest to, and I haven't seen any of this right now. I just the experience I had in 2023, and then back when I was a kid in 1981 are the only things I've got real experience with. But boy, there's just a lot going on. And then you see reports in Russia of this going on, China, Japan, Iran, Tajikistan. I can't even say it, one of those Ikistans, where in the Ural Mountains somewhere. All over England, over uh, the U.S. bases in England. This is going on. There's some really just strange stuff, and I just don't know what it is. And again, my instinct tells me it's a number one. If you see in the chat, it's a number one that it's weird. I don't know if anybody's trying to chat there, but I'm only seeing my stuff, so maybe I'm jacking this up and I'm not doing something right. Let me take a look real quick here. But there's stories out there. You just go to YouTube about what's going on when you type UAP or any of that kind of stuff. There's loads of videos up there about it, and I want to go to sites that I have some faith in, and I think News Nation is pretty good. I trust the people on there. I think I've never really. Share this. I've never really been I'll call it a big Chris Cuomo fan, but you know, I I trust him. I think I don't think he's going to lie about his point of view on it and the people that he has on his show. So I think I'm good with all that. But so the question is, what does it really come down to? And I don't know. My chat's not really working here. This is weird. Now I'm using. I used to use Restream for all this, but I've moved to just using live within YouTube. So I don't know if I'm operating this correctly. So there may not be anybody on here, and I'm talking to nobody right now. But anyway, I just wanted to share this. I'm usually on in the last month. I've really converted over to TikTok because it's so much easier to get followers over there. And I think I just went past 900 today. So last week, right now, I was hoping to get to 700, I think it was, and now I just broke 900 last night, which it's so much easier over there to do all that kind of stuff, to do anything with lives or videos. So I've really camped out over there. And I don't know, Buzz, if you're still on there, but uh, there's people over on TikTok that just steal stuff from YouTube, and particularly in the retirement area. Uh, I think they took one of yours actually, and they cut it. They take portions out that they think are really relevant for a short video on TikTok, and they take it and just make it their own, and they get thousands and thousands and thousands of views. The one guy that I know we're all familiar with down in Florida, there's people that regularly take his stuff and throw it on TikTok, and he gets hundreds of thousands of views on TikTok with it. I know they've monetized and they're making money, and I know it's not legal either, but it's going on. But anyway, in relation to the topic of this, lions and tigers and drones, oh my, it's really interesting what's going on. And I wish my chat was working. I don't think it is to see what people are thinking there. Okay, I see Scott's on there. He says, "Not a TikTok user myself." Hey, Scott, how good to see you, man. Uh, I got a feeling TikTok may be going away. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I'm just not sure, but it's so much easier. I've met a lot of great people on there that are into the same things. The same communities are out there, especially astronomy. They're out there, and a great guy out of Georgia that is retired and is big into astronomy. So he leaves the Atlanta area and goes up into the mountains. I haven't talked to him about this topic, but I'm really careful on TikTok. I hate using it because I feel like I'm probably giving away my phone to the Chinese. Uh, I won't be the only one. I won't be the only one. I guess if that's the case is all I can really say. But Scott, yeah, been a while. Missed the first part of the live, but there's definitely something strange going. I forget, Scott, where you at, my friend? I forget where you're at because there's definitely something going on. The question is, what exactly is going on, right? I don't really know what it is, but there's sure something going on. Have you had any experiences? If you had any experiences that are strange? That's right. You're my buddy in Tampa. Yeah, and you got to get out of Tampa area to that. You got to some park to get your Sea Star out, right? Yeah, Tampa Bay. Yep. I was getting ready to. My daughter graduates from college here. She's getting her bachelor's degree next this Saturday, and we're talking about going to Key West after Christmas um, for her area. She's like in marine biology, so we're talking about going to Key West just as an after Christmas thing. But I'm not sure. I've never been to Key West. I hear it's pretty expensive. I'm not sure it's worth it. So we may go out to Monterey, California instead, and tour that area. But have you had any experiences with what we're talking about here with the drones? I'm curious if anybody else has had the experience. I was telling the story. Yeah, very cool. Pretty proud of her. It's funny. She takes the Sea Star. She takes my telescope with her friends, and they'll go out and use it, which is great. It's great fun by me. It's good to be able to share that with her. Um, I'm really curious if other folks have had. I don't know if you were on earlier when I was talking about this, but I uh, I had an experience in 2023 where I was out with my other telescope before I had a Sea Star, my Aptura, and I was out looking at the sky. I don't know. I think it was September 2023, and I saw exactly what's being reported right now in the west to where I live, out in the where I live, way out in the country here. And it wasn't an airplane. I know that, and I don't think it was a it could have been a helicopter technically, but it was in the sky and it wasn't moving for like 20 minutes or so. It just didn't move. And so I discount it was a helicopter. So it had to be a drone or something really funny going on, like these guys are talking about here in the News Nation. So far, the only drone I've seen is when I fly my Mavic Pro. Can't say I've seen anything really strange lately. Yeah, I think I've got the same Mavic you've got, and I'm pretty good with it, and it's definitely not that what I've seen, because it was too far away for what I saw. But I kind of wrote it off. I don't know if you were on earlier. I kind of dismissed the whole thing as a. This was like 2 weeks for 2 full weeks in the same part of the sky, the western sky, about 10 to 15 degrees up in the sky. Exactly some of the stuff you're seeing on the news right now in New Jersey. Exactly the same kind of stuff. Uh, and, I didn't have all the tail light, the lights blinking and on and off. I don't know what's going on there. That's kind of strange to me. But it was interesting. I remember calling my wife out to look at it to see what she thought what it was, and she didn't really know. She's not really into any of this stuff. But after 2 weeks, it was over. But I wrote it off to I think it was probably law enforcement. I think, yeah, weird indeed. I think it was probably a drone that the law enforcement was using to try to catch some meth cookers. So out in the cornfields in the Midwest, they have labs in the middle of a cornfield because it's so easy to hide it there. So I'm wondering if it wasn't that they had a drone go up and they were trying to recon an area to find out where they had the meth cooker at. Other than that, yeah, it wasn't noticed. It wasn't so not Venus refracting off of swamp gas. Yeah, I knew it wasn't that. I'm certain it wasn't that. Yeah, I hear you though. It makes you wonder though. There's just this seems to just it's been going on all fall. What is it? What's going on in my head, as you can maybe see in the chat. And I know I'm repeating myself. I have to believe it's. I mean, there's an off chance it's pranksters just with a bunch of drones, but with all the reports I'm seeing, and again on TikTok, there's hundreds of videos out there of this, and I'll write off about if I look at the person that posted the video immediately, okay, that's BS, that's BS, and I dismiss it. But there's some that I look at that I look at what they post, and then who it is, how many followers they have, all that stuff, and you try to read between the lines. Are they full of crap or not? There's just a lot going on out there, and then especially when you see news sources talk about it, you just wonder what the heck's going on here. And my head has to believe it's something's going on with our military. I mean, why wouldn't they shoot something down? If something's flying over, if several of these are flying over Langley Air Force Base of all places, for Christ's sake, I can't imagine us being okay with that. I'm not okay with it. I don't think most people are okay with it. But when you look at it and the congressional hearings that occurred yesterday with like the FBI, they're like blowing it off. It's like, it's not posing a harm to people yet so far. and we don't know really what it is, but they don't seem too concerned about it. So if I think about that, just have this, so I'm not ignoring. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I get kicked off all the time with my. Thank you for sharing that. I get kicked off all the time with my. I'm on Starlink, so I get kicked, as you probably, I think you know, so I get kicked off all the time. But so if it is the military, yeah, it's just crazy how they're blowing it off. It's like, so either they don't know, and they don't know what, they don't want to admit, they admit that they say they don't really know what it is, but it's not posing harm. Well, that's not really, that doesn't uh, engender a lot of confidence, right? And who you hope would have a good handle on this stuff. So either they're being honest and saying we don't really know, but it's not posing a harm, which I just have a hard time believing they don't know. A really, really hard time with that, right? I mean, you're talking the FBI, right? And people in the military, that have talked about this. Christopher Wray, he was Secretary of State for Christ's sake, and they're all saying they don't know what it is. And does make it rather suspicious for sure. So, if I go with, I'm an Occam's razor guy. If you're familiar with Occam's razor, he talks about what's that? What's the Occam's razor say to us? That's the simplest, most logical explanation is usually the right explanation for what's going on. So the simplest one is just a bunch of drones that are up in the sky. But since there's so many of them, that would be a rather interesting coordinated effort among a lot of people to be doing this, or one person with a lot of money to put a lot of drones up in the air. So if it's not that, the next most logical answer in my mind is it the military? They, when I look at them, they're pretty big, but I could see the military having drones that size. But what are they doing? What's their point? What are they doing with it? Is it a show? It's a charade for something, for somebody? Are they just doing some kind of a maneuver and they don't really care that anybody sees it or knows what's going on? I suppose that could be it. But why would they be doing that? Are they testing new equipment? If so, I mean, why do they gotta make such a show of it and go over military bases, for Christ's sake? I mean, we're talking Langley. My God. I mean, Langley Air Force Base in Virginia, right? That's like the site of some of the most critical things in the United States military that are being handled there. Getting us ready for the big reveal that we are not alone. I mean, that's what, if you look at Alizendo, and if you know Jeremy Corbell and all those guys, that's what they're saying. And it's really strange. Thanks for sharing that, Scott. So, I follow a lot of these guys. I listen to them and I watch their videos, especially when they were on Rogan's show, when they went on Joe Rogan, and they talk about all this stuff. And I remember last summer, like George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell, they were talking about how these big congressional hearings were going to come out in the fall after the election, and that's what happened. And it's leading up to something huge that's going to happen. So, and I thought, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. But sure enough, that's what's happened. After the congressional hearings, this has really kind of hit. I won't call it the mainstream news, because the mainstream news doesn't really cover this. I don't think News Nation is what I consider. And when I say mainstream news, I talk about like the legacy media. So ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, Fox is covering. I don't know, the CNN's to a new world, right? You follow them, all of them too. Yeah, it's interesting to listen to them, right? It's really, really interesting to listen to him. And, it's like, is it a slow it's a slow, how do you say this? It's like a very slow show or a charade to desensitize us to, like, a whole paradigm shift in how things work. And, if I have my tinfoil hat on, boy, the pieces are falling in place for that. If I think about what I heard leading up to this, right? I think it was Corbell and Knapp talking about last summer this was all going to happen, and sure enough, here it is. So here there's just a big cabal of people. Yeah, I just don't know. I just don't know. It's really weird, but uh, it just seems really strange to me that the military would be doing something like this. Maybe they just don't care and they're showing it, or is it something that we just can't even fathom going on here? It looks like there's other people in here. I'd love to hear other people's perspective here. They said anything. I don't know if my buddy Buzz is still in here or not. Buzz, you still out there? For anybody in here, Buzz is a fantastic follow. It's Buzz's retirement garage. He's one of the first people on. He's one of the, put in the chat there. He's one of the first people I actually followed when I started to get or subscribed to when I got onto YouTube to try to actually generate content myself. Fantastic guy. He did a great video yesterday, I think it was, about Christmas, and a regular article I think appears in the Cleveland Plain Dealer, and he just read it. And it was a fantastic reading of it. So if you're still on, thanks for that. It was really enjoyable to hear that. But back to this, it's like, holy cow, what's next? And it's just not. Oh, I forgot about Ross Cole, the guy from Australia. What's his name? Ross Colehart. Pull him up. I'm too cheap to pay for the non-commercial version of YouTube. So yeah, so this guy is I mean, my God, he was on the 60 Minutes version, Australian version of 60 Minutes for most of his career, and then he got roped into this whole thing, and he's big into this as well, and he's talking the same stuff. And I think he's got such interesting sources. He's very, very careful about what he releases, about what he knows. He went off on this video, I think, about was JFK. It sounds crazy to talk about this stuff, but was JFK really off because of what he knows, what he knew about UFOs? Yeah, I just won't do it. Yeah, Scott says I'm also too cheap to pay for non-commercials too. It drives me nuts. You can probably remember too when YouTube first introduced the ads. You get to skip the ad automatically. Skip, and everybody, I skipped, and then they slowly made it where they gave other options, I guess, right? Where you could have you couldn't skip or you had to watch it for 30 seconds or whatever. Then now there's sometimes I get like 3 ads or 4 ads. I'm like, oh, this just sucks. But it's better than what regular TV offers as far as I'm concerned. And the skip 3 times are getting longer and longer. Yeah, it's just like regular TV at this point, isn't it? But anyway, so do you watch? I like Cole Hart. I like this Ross a lot. And if I try to think about the guys. Yeah, amen to that. I think about the people that I have or I give credence to, and I think he's legit. I think Ross is legit, and I think for a while with Alizendo, the other guy I was talking about. Where's Lou? Where's Big Lou? Let's find him here. Elizondo, yeah, Luis Elizondo. For a while I listened to him and I thought, okay, is he really I mean, they're smoking weed right there, right? But this is the guy from the military, right? And I listened to him talk, and at first I heard him and I thought, okay, is he just a plant? Because if you want to get really conspiratorial, is the US government or the military throwing out just smoke screens out there to keep people away from what the real truth is of how they spend money and what they're doing or what they know? And I thought about he fell into that camp for a long time with me. I thought, because I'm naturally kind of skeptical um, of a lot of things that I hear. I'm skeptical of them, and I sometimes I assume that there's other things going on that we don't know the whole story, and that like the military is pretty secretive about, especially advanced technology, and they're not going to share that with us. And I thought, is he just an agent to help throw a smoke screen up? But wow, when I see other independent reporting on him and where he lives and his family and the stress they've been under, I think he's probably the real deal. And he's in front of Congress and all that. I could be wrong, and maybe I just want to believe it. I guess the tinfoil hat side of me, but I think he's the real deal. So him and that Ross Colehart, I think Jordan Knapp's legit. The KLS reporter from Vegas. I think everybody knows who he is. Well, I don't know. I assume people know who he is. I first became familiar with Knapp back in, and he's got a big series on Netflix right now, right? I first There's a stinking ads again. Dang it. I first became familiar with George Knapp back in, oh gosh, it was like in I'll say 19. When did I first? Probably about 99, I want to say. when I was working as a manager, third shift in a distribution center, and we'd have, back in the day, it would have been Art Bell's show on all night, that Coast to Coast AM, and he'd backfill for him sometimes. So that's when I first became familiar with George, and, interesting guy, and, again, maybe he's out for the money of selling books or clicks or whatever, but I kinda feel like he's legit too. So that's 2 or 3. There's other people I don't, I just kinda when you look on YouTube and you look at the videos that people put out about this stuff, people are just wanting clicks, and, there's a lot of 'em I just skip by. Oh, there's that Michio Kaku, he's another one. I don't know about, he's like a professor at Columbia, so, I mean, he's a pretty bright guy, but he doesn't stack real high on my list of people I think about when it comes to this whole topic. But my god, he's a physicist and he's astrophysicist. See, we're probably in the same circle and the people that we talk to, right? Or that we, interact with or look to here. Are there any of those guys not legit in your mind, Scott? Corbell's pretty good. I mean, these are all good. I'm trying to think of some of the ones I dismiss. Oh, this one, Dr. Greer. So he was an ER doc, right? Wasn't he an ER doctor? And he, is big into this space too, but I don't follow him a lot. I've listened to some of his stuff, but I don't know what to think of him. But the question is, where's this all headed? Is it just going to disappear and it's just all gone? Kind of like the light I saw a couple of years ago in the western sky, or is it leading to something more? I don't know. When you listen to some of these guys who I think are legit, they're talking about a real paradigm shift. Scott says, "I was going to mention Greer. I'm still not sure about." Yeah, he's the one that I don't know enough. I've seen some of the videos he's done, and I question them a little bit. Uh, it's almost like they're vying for to be the primary source for all this information. I don't know that he has the same contacts that some of these other guys do. But it's still interesting to listen to. But I'm really skeptical about all this stuff, and I try to pass it through that lens of trying to be like a scientist would look at it, right, with the empirical method. So I really don't know what to make of him. He'd be low on my tier of the whole thing. But if and there's Grush, David Grush. I mean, the guy's my God, the guy's got to be legitimate, right, for his role in intelligence in the Air Force. Again, unless he's a smokescreen somehow set out there, but I don't think he is. I just don't see what he gains. He loses a lot more than he gains by saying what he's saying out there. And boy, there's things he would talk about in the congressional, or he'd be asked in the congressional hearings that he would say, I have to tell you in a skiff, right? So go down below the Capitol and private, the private small skiffs to give more information to people. So yeah, I just don't know. And I'm thinking where logically this leads to. But again, my empirical side says it's got to be our military that's doing this. And they just don't care. They don't feel like they owe us an explanation. That's one. That's the most logical thing I still stick with. That's what I keep Scott says, that's what I keep thinking, what do all or most of these people have to gain? Yeah, so what do they have to gain? Some of these people, they have a lot more to lose than gain, I think, other than maybe clicks on social media. Uh, but if I go back to if it's not I dismiss the idea that it's just private individuals with a bunch of drones. That just doesn't seem likely to me. It's the most logical because they do just act like a mix between a drone and like a small, pretty advanced, not small, they're some of the size of cars they're saying, but I think some of them are mistaken. They're just airplanes or whatever, or helicopters, but the other ones, I just don't think it could be individuals pulling that off. So it's either the military for some reason that I'm not sure, or I dismiss that it's an adversary, that I've heard that story out there too, that it's China or Russia, and it's such advanced technology, we can't do anything about it. So therefore the military is afraid to say that. So they say, oh, we don't know what it is. I suppose that's possible. And, it's just China or Russia just showing what they can do. But I just have a really hard time believing that's it. That I really have a hard time believing. That would mean they back engineered something to the degree that it's got advanced technology built in that we can't do anything about. We just have to sit there and watch it happen. But I just have a really hard time believing that. Maybe that's it. But that would I don't know if that would be my second the next explanation I go to with Occam's razor or not, because the next one is the crazy one, right? That it's really a slow show of or it's a slow paradigm shift for mankind into a new a new world. So it's desensitizing us, getting us used to seeing something we can't really control. And I know it gets into like Project Bluebeam and all that kind of stuff, but it makes you really wonder if that's the last option in my mind that I consider. And what's the boxes it has to check for it to be that. So it'll be interesting to see how much longer this goes on, because it's just crazy. It's just, I mean, they were lighting up the counties in New Jersey this was happening in, and I think, again, it can't be. I mean, it's there was a report in Brooklyn last night simultaneously with again over Bedminster, which is Trump's golf course, and then Picatinny, what's it called? Picatinny. It's a munitions base, and then over a nuclear power plant, and then over like a dam, or maybe those were one of the same. I don't know New Jersey that well, but I mean, that's just it's amazing. And there's been what's the story about how in Montana? So funny story. I'll just tell this. So back when I was in college, and I graduated from college in 1988 with a bachelor's degree, and I decided at that point my brother had talked me into going into the military. Level drones in there. It's all over Fox News. They had an official saying Iran has a ship off the East Coast. So now how? So now it's Iranian drones. Yeah, I just don't believe it. And there's no way. There's just no way. If it's Iran, we'd be taking them down. There's just no way they'd be allowing drones unless. I mean, how in the world could Iran have advanced technology we couldn't stop? I have a hard time believing that. Just a real hard time. But yeah, I didn't know they were saying that. That must be pretty new. Uh, but anyway, let me get back to my story real quick. So I actually took the test to join the Air Force the whole bit, and I could get in as an officer because I had a bachelor's degree. But the only job I forget what they call it in the military. What's the acronym they use for your profession or the job that you're trained for in the military? I forget what it is now because I didn't go to the military. But funny story, I went in and I scored so well on the first tests. I forget it wasn't the ASVAB or whatever. It was some other test they gave me that they said, we're gonna have you take the pilot test to screen for being a pilot. I thought, well, holy cow, I never even dreamed that was an option, but yeah, I'll take the test. So it turns out I took the test and I failed it miserably. They were asking questions about Rolls Royce engines and things I had no clue about. And then I'm red green colorblind and I flunked that. So that was the end of my military my pilot career real quick. But then I could still get in as an officer, but the only occupation they would allow me to have would have been at the bottom of one of those missile bunkers in like Nebraska or the Dakotas or Montana. And I forget even the job name now, but it's the guy who got to hit the button, right, for the nukes, for the ICBMs, which leads to the story about, if you remember, a few years ago or a long time ago. Yeah. Oh well, no. Yeah. Oh hell no. Yeah. Yeah, there's no way I was gonna do that. I'm not doing that. And, so if you remember, there's a story about the one was it Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, where the guy who was in charge of that retired years ago, and I think he's dead now, but he was telling this maybe he is, might be still alive, but he was telling the story of how, these same kind of things would appear over that Malmstrom Air Force Base, and you all may know this, you probably know this story already, but they would turn on and off. Like, they'd start the code to launch, and the people that would have been doing the job I would have been doing if I had got into the military, they're just sitting there watching the countdown start, and they're like, "Holy crap." How do I stop this? And on the flip side, doing the same thing, they could just turn everything off, turn it on and off at will, and these people couldn't do anything about it. This is the guy that was, I believe he was in a high level as an officer at that Air Force base, and he's talking about it in retirement. And it's like, okay, I got to. I mean, you're not going to trust somebody like that who's, he's got nothing to lose. He's like 85 or something years old now. What's he stand to gain by lying about it? So something funky going on, right? But again, who is it? Is it our military trying it out, testing out technology, or is it God knows who it is? And the same thing I know has happened in several. I don't remember the Air Force bases in England, but the same kind of stuff's happened there too. Just really strange stuff. So it's fun to put the conspiratorial hat on because it really leads to that. And what does that mean? So I know we're all thinking the same thing, and I think about what's the common theme. So if I go back and you think about the start of a lot of the stuff with Roswell, and it all started to take off after World War II. So after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? So if you want to, let's play conspiratorial in what happened. So did that get the notice of someone or something and said, "Oh, oh, they're growing up here. They've got the ability to completely take care of themselves completely." Scott says, "Not like a guy in his very late years of life is looking for a street cred." Yeah, I mean, he had nothing to gain. I forget the name of the guy, but what was his name? Maelstrom. What was his name? He was really interesting in the story I saw about him. Let's see if I can get it. Maelstrom Air Force Base. Well, let's call it UFO and see if I can pop him up. I spelled Maelstrom wrong, but that's okay. Yeah, this is 67. Oh, that stupid ad again. Urgh. Yeah, 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 yeah. I don't like these channels where they like recreate what happened. I know they're doing it for the make it more interesting, but I just soon hear from the guy that the people involved, the eyewitness account. There he is. He's being interviewed there. I mean, what is that guy right there? Who's probably what is he? Probably looking at his. So I work in healthcare a lot. I do consulting in healthcare, so forgive me, but I'm guessing he's 75 at least, maybe 80, right? And I think he's not alive. I don't think he's living anymore, if I remember correctly. What's he got to lose? What's this guy got to lose? He was there when it happened. He's telling the story of what I just articulated earlier. What's the guy got to lose? So it makes you wonder what in the world is going on here. What the heck is going on? And then you look at still like if you're Scott, you're probably I know you're familiar with it based on what I'm seeing from you here. Look at like Bob Lazar, and even just recently, I remember that Jeremy Corbell was doing a follow like interviews with him, and I think George Knapp had connected the two, and he still had a lot of information. And Lazar's kind of just faded back into I think he's like in upstate New York or somewhere remote, and he does just like testing on his own and just weird just stuff on his own, just trying to stay out of the radar. Um, Scott says, "Let's go back as far as Betty and Barney Hill, a mixed race couple in the late '60s. Do you really think they wanted exactly? They didn't want it. They didn't care." And Lazar's fascinating. So the Betty and Barney Hill thing, I heard just recently that event. Who said this? It was one of the. It was like Knapp. I think it was George Knapp, who's maybe it was not. He talked about how that one was clearly an early attempt of the Air Force trying to create a smoke screen or something. I don't know how. I think that's what he said. But yeah, those folks are. My God, were they looking for publicity? This is the early '60s, right? I think it was, and they're just driving where somewhere in northern New Hampshire, back home or something, down to wherever they lived in southern New Hampshire, I think it was. And wow, that changed their lives forever. They weren't looking for. There's nothing positive about it to get publicity out of it. And yeah, Lazar is just incredibly fascinating. And you look at some of the stuff there again, basing it off George Knapp. Scott says, "Oh, really? I hadn't heard that." Yeah, I heard that just the other day, and I thought that's really kind of strange. It's really, really strange. Um, Level drone. Thanks for contributing here. Says, has Trump said anything about these drones? I don't think I've heard a word. And that, what does that mean? He had Trump, but I don't think I've heard much other than the congressional hearings and a couple of people on that committee about any of this. But then you think about all the other things that are happening. It's like part of me, gosh, I hate sounding like a crackpot here, but part of me starts to think, It's like a whole bunch of things are happening and they're starting to coalesce, right? So I think about, um, I won't get into the political side of it, very deeply, but I mean, the bottom line is Trump has nothing to lose. He's not, he's not going to have another term. The guy's not beholding to anybody, from what I can tell. Nobody owns him, I don't think, do they? He's going to do what he wants to do, and what he says he's going to do, he's going to tear apart Washington D.C. Well, I don't think that comes easily, right? And if people take that at face value who are in Washington D.C. and have been for a long time, and he's creating, and boy, I wish I had bought some Dogecoin last fall. Holy crap. I'd be I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be sitting in Fiji right now if I had bought some Dogecoin back then. I can't believe I didn't see it coming, with the way Elon was getting involved with everything. But anyway, that's a different story. But it feels like all this stuff's coalescing at once, right? So you've got, um, the specter of what's going to happen in Washington D.C. when Trump comes to power, and that's got to scare to the core. It's got to absolutely rock to the core, uh, people in Washington D.C. and the Collar counties surrounding it. Because I work, so I do part time consulting, and on the side I do work with people that talk. They work with OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, and those people are scared to death because they've been working remote since COVID. They don't know if they're going to have a job, and they don't know if they're going to go back to work in an office. I mean, they legitimately left other jobs to go to work for OPM for their whole career because they love the remote aspect of it. And I'm getting kind of deep off topic a little bit, but it's interesting to listen to watch what's happening with the people that I know at OPM, and then the Centers for Medicaid, Medicare and Medicaid. I know a lot of folks there that I've worked with in my consulting career. But it's interesting, and what's going to happen, and the powers that be. I mean, you're talking some pretty dark, deep stuff that aren't going to be too welcoming of what could happen here, and they're not going to give up the claws of power very easily, I don't think. So I don't know how that relates to everything here with, other than if you think about Project Blue Book and all, was it Blue Beam and Blue, I don't know much about those, but if you think about all those, is this whole thing a charade? I don't know, is this all these drones everywhere? Is it some kind of a charade to hasten in a new paradigm, a new world? That's really tinfoil hatty, isn't it? I don't know, but I know there's people that I believe there's people that have to be in positions in government that, boy, I don't know that I don't want to say anything too dangerous here, but uh, what lengths would they go to prevent any of this from happening, right? So what lengths would people in what I call, I mean, Department of Defense has how much of a budget that's just off the record that we don't know how the money's really spent. If you're throwing Musk and that Ramaswamy in there and they're going to start rooting out wasted spending, I don't know how any of that goes or what happens with that. And so is this, I mean, it gets really crazy, but is this whole drone thing going on like a step towards, uh I think in Project Bluebeam, what do they say? I can't remember exactly what they say, but it's something about you're trying to basically scare everybody into a situation and legitimizing that the government through the Patriot Act or whatever has to step up to a new level and take over. You know, I forget who was the representative that was the lead prosecutor or one of the lead prosecutors during the Trump impeachment that he was on. I saw him on tape of last fall of saying they were talking about how you just can't allow Trump to get in, and it left it open that there's ways in the Constitution to prevent that from happening. And I don't know if any of that's going to happen, but it's like you just wonder what's going on here. I mean, it is weird that at least I haven't heard anything from Trump about any of it. The question's why. Is it just because I have to believe they know about it, don't they? You know, is it possible they don't know? I don't know. Because you got to dig for it. For me, it's like, I don't have regular TV, so I don't get any of the legacy media. So, all my news comes from YouTube or from Substack. I used to go to Drudge Report, but it just seems like that's the National Enquirer now, or the radio on AM radio, which I'm kind of a dinosaur and I listen to still. But I don't know that this, my wife doesn't know anything about this unless I told her. I was telling her about it. And she didn't have a clue any of this is going on. So does the average American know what's going on? I don't know. It's very interesting. It's a I've already been an hour on this. Holy cow. Woo. God, it's easy to talk about all this stuff. I wish it was like TikTok and where you could have people jump. It's really cool. If you're not familiar with TikTok, and Scott, you mentioned you're not built that way. And I don't I understand, I hear you. On TikTok, it's like on the screen that you see right now in the right-hand corner, it'd be like a Microsoft Teams meeting where you'd see blocks of people that could just join, and I'd click the button, you'd hop on, and we could talk. And, I don't know if Buzz is still on here or not, but I know Buzz has been looking for a way to have conversations like that for a long time, and I you can do it through, like, Restream or there's some other third-party apps out there, but I was doing that for a while, but I wanna pay for it and too cheap. So YouTube's just not built that way to do it, which kind of sucks. But TikTok, it's so easy to do, and it's crazy. I'll go out there. I did a stream. What was it, last Thursday or Friday? And I mean, holy crap! The number of people that jump on there is just crazy, and you can interact with them. It's really cool. But I've got it really causes cognitive dissonance for me because I just feel like the Chinese are probably getting all their all my information on my phone and probably using my phone to do some unsavory things. So I don't know. It causes a lot of dissonance for me, but boy, the engagement with people is outstanding there. Um, anyway, I thought I'd get on here and kind of talk about this morning about what's going on here and where it leads and get. I know it's a horrible time to be doing a live, so it's hard to get a lot of people on here to do it. But I didn't have a lot going on this morning. I thought I'd try to do it and just see what I could just talk about it and see who else was on there and who else could jump on and say what they think. Level Drone, if you're still on, what do you think? What's going on? I'm really curious what people think about what exactly is happening here with all these drones. And is it too crackpotty or too conspiratorial to be thinking that it's more than just, it's not our military and it's not just people playing a prank with regular drones. Then what the heck is it? And I can't believe it's Iran. It's a foreign adversary. I just don't know, and I have a hard time believing it. But I mean, the Chinese are, forget my language. I mean, they could have some really smart people that they're forcing into labs. And how long they've been researching how to back engineer something that maybe they've got hold of. It's possible, I guess. I mean, it just doesn't seem likely that with the U.S. being the really the academic, intellectual, innovative capital of the world and has been for God knows how long, that something like that would be innovated in another country. I guess it's possible. I mean, you had the Germans were way out in front of us in World War II with the V2 with those rockets, right? That's possible. Um, Level Drone says it's not hobbyist. The drones are $1 million drones. Yeah, so it can't be that, right? Because these are the size of small cars, right? Or bigger is what I'm hearing. But when you look at them, when I see them, I think, okay, yeah, it's too expensive for an individual to be doing. So then that whirls that one out pretty quickly. And there's so many of them, it's got to be, it can't be, I don't think it can be like, like down during the 4th of July, they do these drone shows. And, because they're too big and there's too many and they're too spread out geographically, right? I mean, just in the last 24 hours, I feel confident in the sources that I saw the stories emanating from that last night alone there was a sighting in the Bronx because that was reported I think by NBC News, which was one of the first I've seen on what I call the mainstream media. In the Bronx, they saw one. So I guess it could be something they mistook that was, an airplane flying in or out of LaGuardia, but the way they behave doesn't appear to be an airplane at all. An airplane can't stop like it does or maneuver like it does. So it's simultaneously. Then last night you had that, then you had all the same ones in New Jersey again, and then the ones that get a little more conspiratorial or sensational, in other parts of the U.S. Like I saw last night, I think in Colorado, over where Rocky Mountain Arsenal or somewhere like that, and then St. Louis had one somewhere outside of Cleveland. God, where were the other ones? It wasn't Vandenberg in California, but it was nearby. And then you get the ones in the other countries in England, and then some of the other countries I mentioned earlier. So yeah, it's just weird. It's really really weird. What do you think it is, level drone? What's your take? I'm really curious what, and you too, Scott, what's your take? And there's several people it looks like on here. Really curious what other takes are. And it really sucks because God, I wish I could interact live with people. And you don't even have to have your camera on. You just pop on and just talk. It's a lot easier than typing like this to type a reply. But I'd really be curious. I gotta check something. Whoops. Give me just a second. I gotta take care of a dog. All right, get back here. Come on. Let's go. Okay. Okay, I'm back. Man, I do not think I understand this chat. There's got to be more activity than I've got. Live chat and top chat. So spam's not included. Okay. I'm getting so used to how they do it on TikTok. It's hard to remember or hard to know how it works here. And Restream was so nice, but it's so expensive. I just not interested in doing it. Let's check. I don't even know which news sources to go to anymore. I'm going to go to CNN and see if they're even reporting it. If I look here, it's sure not making the top. It's just not making the top news. So just does the average American even know anything about this? I don't think they do. They just don't know anything about it. And maybe it's, well, shit. Let's go up here. Where do you search at? I don't even know how their website works. So drones. Is there anything on CNN's website at all? Drone New Jersey. Let's see what we get when we do that. Well, you get the regular drone. Okay, there we go. That's November 24th. There's nothing recent on CNN at all. There's just nothing there at all. Um, Level drone. These drones are instilling fear and confusion, and our government say they know nothing is bullshit. Yeah. I mean, there's just no way they don't know, right? There's no way they don't know what's going on. So, but so think about that for a moment. So, I agree, I think we all would agree. So, um, they have to know something. So, if I follow that logic, and I do, let me check the other sites. Let's go to the other ones here. So, how about CBS or who? Or let's go to Reuters. Does Reuters say anything about it? Um, so if you, it's sure not making the top news there. There's the whole UHC thing. That's a whole other world. I work in that. Oh, here we go. No, that's Middle East. I work in the world of, I say ancillarily in health insurance, and it's just forgive my language, it's a crap show right now. So I don't know how to search on Reuters here. How do you search? There we go, right there. Let's look for drone New Jersey. We're just having to think about it. Sea drone warfare has arrived. That's May 6th. There's just nothing recent. I mean, they aren't even covering it. They're not covering it at all. So going back to Level Drone's point, to thank you for making that. So the government, I just, it's very difficult to believe that the government doesn't, or some part of the government knows what the heck's going on. They have to. You can't tell me that the FBI and parts of the military don't know exactly what it is. And on top of that, if you add in, okay, if we take that as a given, they have to know. Then the question is, why aren't they getting one of them? Oh, Huggies. I don't need. Why would it show me a Huggies ad? I oh well. So the question is, why don't they take one down? Right? So they would take. Correct me if I'm wrong. So they would not take one down for one of two reasons. The first, I think, one of two reasons. Correct me if you're thinking differently. The first reason is it's actually whatever they are, the drones, they're ours. And for whatever reason, they're just showing them. They're going on their maneuvers, whatever they do. So unpack that one for a moment. Okay, let's say that's what it is. Then why are they doing it the way they're doing it? It's very in the open and it's over very interesting locations. If they were just testing them, they could test them anywhere. But they're being, from as far as I can tell, they're over very interesting locations. Langley freaking Air Force Base for one. I mean, really? Langley? And then was it Picatinny, like a arsenal or a gun, or I forget what they call it. It's in New Jersey. And then Bedminster, so Trump's golf course, and then where else? Like nuclear power plants, that kind of. I mean, it's why do they appear there? Why do they appear there? If they could appear anywhere. So that's kind of crazy to me. So if or maybe they just don't, as I said earlier, they don't care. They don't care. They're using their equipment, they're doing it the way they want it, and they don't owe us any explanations. But it's our stuff. Yeah, it's some branch of the dark military, I'll call it, that it's their stuff and they're just doing what they want because you can't do anything about it. And we're just going to do it. And we'll just say we don't know what it is. Scott says government knows what is best for us. LOL. They think we can't handle the truth. It will cause mass chaos. Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's certainly plausible, right? They know, right? They're all-knowing and know exactly what should happen. If it, so if a drone operator did that, they would find you. Yeah, I mean, I remember when I got my drone license for my Mavic, and Scott, I don't know if you guys have one. Do you have Mavics? I got a Mavic too. I think Scott's got a similar one. I remember, and I kind of regret doing it, where you could get the actual. I shouldn't say that. I think it's illegal, isn't it? I got the drone operator license from the government to give me a number and all that stuff, and I didn't really have to. I don't think. I mean, technically you're supposed to, but anyway. But if I told my wife, I showed her the maps and all that, how it works on the Mavic, like that's a no fly area. That's no fly area, and I live in the middle of nowhere. But if I flew my drone over just the small, even close to the small regional airport that I live in, or went over 400 feet, I've accidentally gone over 400 feet a couple of times. Nothing happened, but if I flew it next to that airport, I guarantee I would be stunned if I didn't have law enforcement showing up pretty quickly at that point. So that, yeah, there's no way it's a regular drone operator. It just can't be. 'Cause they'd take them down immediately. And that many, I mean, there's just no way. But going back to the idea of so if it's ours and they're just playing dumb, well, it's gotta be that, correct? That they're not they're saying, "Ah, we know what it is, don't worry about it, it's not that big a deal." Or legitimately, it's a part of the government that doesn't know because it's something dark technologically or so advanced that only certain branches of the military know about it. So they're legitimately saying, "Yeah, we don't know," but I don't believe that. I don't believe it. They have to know what it is. So yeah, I logically, I have to dismiss that one. It's not our stuff. It just don't it doesn't either they're just so brazen about it, they don't care, which I guess is possible. And they're just saying, "Ah, don't worry about it." But why? Why would they do that? Unless there's something really, I think it's Project Blue Book or Blue Beam or whatever, what do they call it? That there's something really, really devious going, not devious, but there's a real plan going on for something that's coming up. So I mean, all that really leaves you with is everything that these guys I've been shown have been talking about, right? Is there any other option? I mean, there's no other option that it's something going on. It's really interesting if you listen to like Rogan, they talk about who's the guy they have on Joe Rogan, he's a big burly guy. And then I forget their names now. The other guy had the series on Netflix where they talk about the Ice Age and 10,000 BC and all that stuff, and how their theory on it was really a meteor that caused the Ice Age, and you go back to previous civilizations, that existed before that, and it makes you start thinking about that stuff. And if you're like me, I think, okay, mankind. I had a professor tell me once in college. It was an art history class of all things, and he was showing the art from like cavemen in Lascaux in France, right? And he looked at it and asked the class what they thought. And it looks pretty basic, it's a charcoal drawing. Anybody could do that. And he started to give a lesson I still wish I had recorded to this day about how the thing you don't realize that looks like something to you that maybe a kindergartner could do now. But they just use the tools they had at that point. The people that drew that, the people that in that cave in Lascaux drew that, they were just like you and I. They were just as smart as you and I. They were just on a different tier of where we were technologically, and they just used the best tools they had at the time, right? So it's like if you threw the average American out into the wilderness and told them to get by without, they couldn't survive without modern technology, right? So because they've lost all the stuff they knew and their level of technology, we're so dependent on the inventions we've made, we've lost all that skill. But if you think back, drop that same person back 500 years, they'd be screwed, right? But the people back then, they would be familiar with all the ways to survive back then because that's the time they lived in. They were just as smart as you or I. They just lived in a different time period. So if you go back before the Ice Age and tying it back to what we're talking about here with the drones, how many times has civilization run the circuit? If you go back over millions of years, how many times has civilization just ran and became very advanced and then somehow something happened and ended it, a meteor or whatever? And going far enough back, I know it just sounds so crazy to accept it. And it gets into all sorts of cosmological issues, right? And religious issues too. And you think about it, is it really possible that millions of years ago, God knows, literally, I guess, what happened? Is it an ancient civilization that is way more advanced than us that survive somehow and they're under the ocean? That's where they live. I don't know, or is it the whole who was the guy that wrote the book Chariots of the Gods back in the 70s, and that we're really the children of aliens, right? And there's a lot about that out there too, and you wonder, is it I can't say it very well because I'm not very articulate, but after World War II, did we go up on the radar screen real fast? It's like Nagasaki, Hiroshima, the whole thing where we were testing, under the bleachers at University of Chicago, and then in what's the site in Arizona where they were testing them, and then the Bikini Islands and all that stuff, and then boom, Nagasaki, Hiroshima. That's it. Flag went up, and somebody who's been around a lot longer than we have been, or is much more advanced than we are, or like how does Rogan say it? It's like, holy crap, the monkeys have discovered how to destroy them, destroy themselves. Is it that? Is that really it? And it sounds so crazy. I mean, I know people in my life, and I know really smart people that I've worked with who are smarter than me. That I know physicists. One of my best friends is a physicist, and if I bring this up to him, he just thinks I'm nuts. It's just the military. But if I really try to put the pieces of the puzzle together, I have to start thinking about that stuff. And you know, it's- it sounds crazy, but it also makes sense, right? Yeah, it sounds absolutely nuts. I got to be really careful, and I don't know if you're that way, but it's like you got to be careful who you tell that stuff to, or you bring up that idea. It's the kind of stuff you'd sit around a campfire and talk about when I was younger, right? But when I think about it now, it's like it's 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 uh it's just possible. It's just I saw something on again TikTok, so I take it with a grain of salt. But it was interesting, and they were showing one of these drones. I think it was over near Vandenberg Air Force Base in California, and this guy was filming it, and it had one shape when he was filming it, but he lifted up a lens he had. I don't know what it was from, like some optical lens from Bausch& and Lomb or something like that, or Zeiss. Is it Zeiss, that company? And he held it up and moved it over it in the sky in front of his camera, between his camera and one of these things he saw in the sky, and it changed shape. It was different. It changed the shape of it completely. Like, what the hell's that all about? And the guy sounded legit. I guess he could have been a crackpot, and he was just trying to get views on TikTok, or yeah, engagement on TikTok. But I sat there and watched it. And I know there's, with AGI and all that, you can do all sorts of stuff today. But it makes you wonder, are we, I'm confident, I sound like a nut, but I am confident that there were previous civilizations that got to a level, maybe not in the same way we did, that were advanced, that maybe took a different route than the internal combustion engine or whatever, and they went a different route. But it's hard to believe with the history of Earth, and if you take what I said earlier, that people, you know thousands of years ago, were just as smart as we were. They were just us, just at a different place technologically, right? Because they were starting over with the Ice Age, for instance, 10,000 years ago, right? So they're starting out from scratch, and all they had was legends and lores to pass on the human race. So it's like they were Amish people back then, right? And they had to build it all over again. So how many times did that happen, and how far did it get before the reset occurred? And I have to believe that if you look at all that, that maybe one of them got so advanced that they were able to make it into space, or for whatever reason, they knew there was a big comet coming, and so they went underground to survive. They got so advanced, they built, in the deepest parts of the Pacific Ocean, they built their home there to survive. I don't know. It's possible. It sounds nuts, but it's possible. And so they've developed in a completely different way, independent of us. But they're kind of like a father who looks at us as its sons or its progeny, and says, let's just let them do their thing. But with 1945, it changed everything. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa! What, you're going the wrong way here. What have you done? And slowly they're starting to introduce themselves to us. Maybe, I don't know. Really crazy. It is interesting though. Reuters has nothing. How about AP? But the AP doesn't have anything either. No, not AP. That that's some kind of a sweet electronic analyzer. The Associated Press. I cannot spell when I type real fast when people are online with me. Let's see if let's see where we look here. Anything here? Not they want you to donate to them. They're not profit, and they want your money. But if I look here, of course, the UHC thing's on top. I don't see anything here. I don't see anything here. There's no stories about it. Let's check the history of it here. I don't know what better way to search than New Jersey drone. Let's see, New Jersey drone. Okay, this new. Okay, there you go. Right, there's several here on AP. That's interesting. This yesterday, December 4th. So the first one, December 4th. There's a lot of stories on it here. At least the top four are. And of course, the first one is, don't pose a safety risk. Level Drone says, the fact that they won't close the airspace seems very telling to me. Yeah. So, yeah, I never thought about that. Thanks for sharing that. So, yeah, they do not close the airspace, and they just say, don't worry about it. Scott says, wish I could hang out and listen more, but have to run. I will watch the replay if you post it later. I'm probably getting ready to wrap up, and I need to get on and talk Sea Star again a little bit more with you and some other folks there. So the Sea Star telescope. So I got to give notices when I do that. I know people do that in YouTube of when they're going to go live. Maybe I'll try to remember that, but it's so hit and miss with me. Problem is when I do lives in my basement, it carries upstairs, and my wife just keep it down there. So it makes it problematic. So it's easiest to do it during the daytime when she's not around. Thanks, Scott, for joining. I really enjoy every time we engage here. So we'll talk Sea Star telescope some other time. And I'm going to wrap up here pretty quick. So the New Jersey drone sightings don't pose a safety concern, governor says. What else would he say, right? What else is the guy to say? And I think you're right. They don't close the airspace, which they could do very easily, right? Immediately. Boom, we're locking it down. especially over at Air Force, the military bases. I mean, my God, that's stunning to me. It's absolutely stunning. So yeah, so I don't know. We're gonna find out when we're either this. It's either gonna stop or it's gonna go to the next level. What it does, I don't really know. But if I believe what like Jeremy Corbell and Knapp and Lou Elizondo and Ross, I can remember never remember the guy's first name. Ross, what's his name? Colhart, Russ Colhart from Australia. If I listen to those guys, they say it's coming to something big. It's coming up to something big that's going to happen, and I'm keeping my eye out on it. But thanks for joining here. I've been on an hour and a half. I need to probably check and see if I got any emails here to deal with in my consulting business. But hey, Level Drone, it's been fantastic engaging with you. It sounds like we're kind of birds of a feather here in the way we may think about all this stuff, and it's kind of a safe space to talk about, I guess, as opposed to the regular people in my life who really have no idea about any of this stuff going on. And gosh, I saw Buzz was on earlier, and I love Buzz so much. He's a great guy, and if you it looks like you're on for a while anyway. So thanks, Buzz. I really appreciate that. And I'm going to go. So thanks, Level Drone. It was fantastic to make your acquaintance digitally here, and have a great day.